Guess you don't count. That's what my sister told me, right before the seating chart placed me outside, next to the trash cans. The hallway smelled like lilies and bleach. Inside, I could hear the DJ warming up, counting down to the first dance. My mother adjusted her pearls. My father looked away. I tightened my grip on the gift I'd wrapped the night before, smoothed the wrinkles in my wine-colored dress, and chose silence. No argument. No tears. Just silence. I stood up and walked out into the Vermont air. 5 minutes later, the chandeliers went dark. And a scream split the entire ballroom in half. But before I tell you what happened next, you need to know how we got there. The Vermont air was sharp that morning. The kind that smells like pine and old money. My sister, Leia, had chosen the lakeside resort for its European charm. The kind of place where guests take 100 photos just to prove they were invited. A glass ballroom overlooking the water, orchids hanging from the ceiling. Candles floating in crystal bowls. Chandeliers glittering over every perfect table. Every perfect table. Except mine. Mine was out by the service doors. Next to the trash cans. I'd driven up alone, 3 hours from Boston, replaying Mom's last text in my head. Please, Amber, no drama today. It's Leia's day. That's all I ever was to her. Not a daughter. Not a person. Just an instruction. A warning label. Don't make noise. Don't take space. Don't remind anyone that the family has another child. Growing up, we were the cliché you see in framed portraits. The golden child, and the invisible one. Leia had ribbons, trophies, attention. I had report cards nobody bothered to read. She cried, she got comfort. I fixed things, and got ignored. Mom called me the easy one. Dad called me independent. Both were polite ways of saying the same thing. Invisible is convenient. The last time I'd seen them all together was Thanksgiving, 3 years ago. The house smelled like burnt pie crust and lemon cleaner. Leia was off in Portugal with her new boyfriend, and for once, the air felt light. Mom asked me to grab an old photo album from her vanity. Instead, I found a small brown journal, soft at the edges from years of use. I opened it. And my jaw tightened with every page. Leia's first day of kindergarten. Leia's favorite meal. Leia's college acceptance. Page after page. Year after year. Memory after memory. But not a single line about me. Not my birthdays. Not my milestones. Not even my name. When I asked Mom why, she smiled, like the question itself was silly. You never needed the attention, honey. You were always fine. That was the night I learned something important. There are 2 kinds of forgotten. Being lost. And being erased. I thought about that journal as I walked toward the ballroom, heels clicking against the marble floor. Through the glass doors, I saw them posing for photos. Mom, glowing in champagne silk. Dad fixing his tie. And Leia, radiant in white. She glanced back at me with a smile. The kind people give store clerks they'll forget in the next 5 seconds. Then the coordinator stopped me with her clipboard. You're Miss Hayes? Yeah. Her smile tightened when she checked the chart. You're listed for hallway seating. I laughed, waiting for her to say she was joking. She didn't. Hallway seating. Next to the trash cans. She pointed to the tiny folding table by the service doors. From there, I could see the whole ballroom. Every sparkle, every laugh. But there was a wall between us. Literal and otherwise. I placed my gift on the table, a small silver box I'd spent hours choosing. And sat alone in the cold draft. Inside, Leia raised her champagne glass. Mom adjusted her veil. Dad beamed with pride. And outside, I sat. Whispering the same lie I'd told myself for years. It's fine. I kept telling myself, you don't need them. And maybe that was true. But the truth pressing against my chest was heavier than pride. Just because I didn't need them didn't mean they had the right to treat me like I never existed. I tried to sink into the background like always. But the hallway was far from quiet. Staff kept pushing through the service door, wheeling bins of melting ice, chatting, laughing. Every time the door swung open, I caught flashes of the ballroom. Chandeliers glittering, dresses swaying. My mother's hand resting on Leia's shoulder, like a crown of approval. Then the laughter shifted. Footsteps. I looked up. And there she was. Leia. Walking toward me with her bouquet in one hand. Veil drifting behind her like smoke. She stopped just outside the doorway. Her reflection doubled in the glass. Two versions of her. The adored bride inside. And the cruel one standing outside. Well, she said, tilting her head. Looks like they finally figured out where you belong. I blinked. What's that supposed to mean? She smiled, that small, practiced smile I'd seen my whole life. The smile she used right before taking the spotlight. Guess you don't count. The words floated out gently. So soft I almost missed how sharp they were. Guess you don't count. Like I was math. Like I was a mistake on her perfect little chart. For a moment, I said nothing. My throat went dry. The kind of dryness that comes from swallowing years of pride. Behind her, the photographer called. Bride. We need you back in the shot. She didn't move. She wanted me to react. To cry. To beg. To prove her point. But I didn't. I just stared long enough for her smile to twitch. You know, I said quietly. There's always been space for both of us. You're the one who keeps shrinking it. Her eyes narrowed. Oh please, Amber. Not everything is about you. This is my day. You could at least pretend to be happy for once. I let out a small, brittle laugh. The kind that sounds like air escaping through a crack. You made sure I couldn't even sit in the same room. What exactly am I supposed to be celebrating? For a split second, her mask slipped. Something flickered in her eyes. Fear, maybe. Guilt, even. But then she straightened her spine. Mom's daughter to the core. You always twist things. Maybe Mom was right. You make everything difficult. Mom. The word hit harder than I wanted it to. I pictured that brown notebook again. Every page filled with Leia's life. And none of mine. I'm not difficult, I said softly. You just hate that I see things as they are. She rolled her eyes, sharp and dismissive. You sound just like Dad. Pathetic and bitter. Face it, Amber. Nobody needs your approval. Not here, not ever. Then she turned, leaving behind a trail of perfume and contempt. I watched her walk away. Her white gown sweeping the floor. And felt that familiar burn behind my eyes. But this time, it didn't hurt the same way. The burn was cleaner. When the service door closed behind her, I picked up the small silver box from the table. The gift I'd chosen with quiet care the night before. I ran my thumb along the ribbon. Then slipped it into my bag. If they didn't want me inside. Fine. But I was not leaving empty-handed. Not this time. For a while, I just sat there. Fingers resting on the smooth edge of the box. Listening to the muffled music leaking through the ballroom doors. It was supposed to be their first dance. Perfect. Photographed. Framed. I imagined Mom wiping tears. Dad clapping too hard. Leia soaking in every second of admiration. The same scene I'd watched my whole life. From the edges. But edges cut. So I stood up. Slowly. My reflection caught in the glass panel. Still composed. Maybe even graceful. If you didn't look too closely. Inside my bag. The silver gift seemed heavier than before. Like something had shifted. Like I had. The night before, I had tied the ribbon tighter than necessary. This wasn't just a present. It was proof. Proof that I existed. I wrapped it carefully, not to threaten, but to shatter the flawless image Leia had spent years constructing. 3 weeks earlier, I had bumped into one of her old coworkers in Boston. A harmless lunch. Then a confession. Turns out Leia had been bragging for months. Marrying Rich would be easy, how effortlessly she could make Noah trust her. He's sweet, she'd laughed. But naive. A few fake tears and I get the house, the money, his name. My coffee went cold as I listened. I hadn't planned to use that information, not until now. Because tonight was different. Before leaving the hallway, I slipped back to the reception table near the ballroom entrance. The wedding planner was distracted, busy adjusting centerpieces. I slid the small silver box among the other gifts, right on top of the pile labeled Leia and Noah. My handwriting steady. Deliberate. Inside, a crystal frame, and, beneath it, a folded note. A printout of the screenshots and receipts her coworker had shown me. Not threats. Just truth. I stepped back. Checked my reflection one last time. Straightened my dress. My heart wasn't racing. Not with panic. With calm. Strange but powerful. I felt ready. Then I turned and walked toward the exit. The Vermont evening hit me with a rush, cold, sharp, final. The lake beyond shimmered under the lights, flat and pale, like a mirror I didn't need anymore. Behind me, faint applause, the echo of a dance I no longer cared about. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel invisible. I reached the parking lot. Gravel crunched under my heels, punctuation, sharp and definitive. No dramatic goodbye, no grand speech. Just me. And the forest night. As I slid into the car and shut the door, I glanced once more at the glowing windows of the ballroom. Silhouettes moved behind the glass, laughing, dancing, forever frozen in golden light. I whispered to myself, let the truth find its way. Inside the ballroom, the party continued. Glasses clinked. A saxophone started a soft note. The crowd pressed in around the couple, Leia glowing in white, perfect, rehearsed. Noah spun her once, twice. Cameras flashed. Everything looked gold, flawless. Then came the moment. The silver box. It was opened near the gift table. A cousin, drunk on curiosity, gathered the presents, sorting bows and ribbons as if for some impromptu ritual. Someone said, let's open them. Leia laughed as she tugged the ribbon from my box. The lid lifted. Inside, the crystal frame. The folded note. Her hand hesitated. The frame blinked under chandelier light, fragile, crookedly beautiful. Then the note slipped loose, landing face up across the polished tablecloth. A hush. Eyes flicked. Someone leaned over. Tension wove through the room. Her fingers trembled. She saw the screenshots first, pale blue messages, receipts, dated lies. He's so easy to handle. Cry a little and he buys anything I want. As the words registered, the music didn't stop, it just thinned. The sax faltered. The violinist missed a beat. Leia's smile froze. Noah read. Page after page. Each line colder than the last. A silence like glass cracking. Then a voice, low but steady, who sent this? She couldn't answer. Because tonight, the fairy tale shattered. And I, invisible no more, had handed it the first crack. Victoria had been watching from across the room. When she heard my name, Amber Hayes, whispered by one of the bridesmaids, her expression sharpened like glass. With the slow certainty of someone who had lived decades in command, she crossed the ballroom floor. "I think you should read the rest," she said quietly. "Before you blame anyone." She held up a small stack of printed screenshots. "These came to me this morning," she added. "Forwarded by a stylist you hired. Apparently, they were sent to the wrong thread." Leia's face drained to a paper-white sheen. "That's not possible," she whispered. But Noah's voice was calm, steady, devastating. "It's real, Leia. The dates match." He turned to the final page. A photo of her own text. "The house will be mine by Christmas." A collective gasp rippled through the guests. Phones came out. The photographer froze mid-shot. A woman whispered, "Oh my God." Leia lunged for the papers. "You can't show people that." Victoria didn't move. "You showed it yourself, sweetheart." And that was when the screaming started. Not loud at first, more like air leaving a collapsing body. Leia stumbled backward, her gown's long train catching beneath her heel. No, you don't understand. He's lying. She did this. My sister. She set me up." Noah's jaw tightened. "Amber didn't write those messages. She planted them. She's jealous, she's always." "Stop." One word. Sharp enough to crack the air in half. "You did this," Noah said. "You humiliated her today, and you thought nobody would ever see who you really are." Every face turned toward them. The DJ lowered the music. A child in the back asked softly, "Mom, what's happening?" And just like that, Leia's perfect day began to dissolve. She whirled toward our parents. "Do something." My mother and Maggie stood pale and rigid, her champagne glass trembling. My father stared at the floor, lips pressed into a line. For the first time in my life. Neither of them defended her. "You knew," Noah said, voice cracking with betrayal. "You knew exactly what you were doing." He reached into his jacket, pulled out a folded document, and placed it on the table. "This is an annulment petition," he said. "I already signed it." Leia stared at the paper like it might explode. "You can't, Noah. You can't humiliate me like this." "I'm not humiliating you," he said softly. "You did that yourself." Someone turned off the music entirely. A silence so deep filled the room it buzzed in everyone's ears. Then, crystal shattered as the frame slipped from her hands and hit the floor. "She's behind this." Leia screamed. "Amber's behind all of it." Victoria only exhaled. "Funny. The only thing your sister did was tell the truth." I had stopped beside my car, engine idling. The golden light from the ballroom reflected across the lake like ripples of fire. I couldn't hear every word. But I heard the scream. Sharp. High. Broken. It echoed across the water, followed by the dull thud of a chair tipping over. The sound I had waited my whole life to hear. Not out of cruelty. But closure. Inside, Leia's mascara streaked down her face like melting ink. "You'll regret this," she sobbed. Noah shook his head. "No, Leia. You will." He walked off the dance floor, Victoria following him, the crowd parting around them like a tide opening. My mother reached for Leia's arm. "Sweetheart, maybe we should go outside." "Don't touch me," she screamed, jerking away. "You all wanted this. None of you ever loved me enough." Her voice cracked into raw, broken sobs. Then, for the first time that night, my father spoke. "You should apologize to your sister." The room froze. Even my mother stared at him, stunned. But Leia just laughed. A sound so brittle it snapped in the air. "Apologize? To her?" Dad's voice was steady, almost tired. "She's not even family," Leia choked. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he shook his head. That's where you're wrong. He didn't explain. He didn't fight. He simply turned away, shoulders heavy, and followed the guests toward the exit. By the time the lights dimmed and the staff started sweeping shattered crystal from the floor, Leia was alone under the chandelier. Her wedding dress, once sparkling, once perfect, now looked wrinkled, exhausted, defeated. The bouquet she'd clutched so proudly lay abandoned beside her chair. Her hands hovered in the air, shaking, grasping for something, anything, to hold on to. The same hands that had pushed me away my whole life. She never saw me leave. From my car, engine humming softly, I watched the ballroom windows flicker against the lake. Guests spilled into the parking lot, whispering like bees around honey. It's all over social media already. Did you see his face? That poor girl. No, the other one. The sister. I didn't feel victory. Just quiet. I rested my hand on the steering wheel and thought about the beginning, that hallway, that smell of lilies and bleach, the folding chair by the trash cans. How everything had started from a seat meant to shame me. And ended with the truth finally exploding in front of everyone who once looked straight through me. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it whispers. Now they see you. The scream from inside faded into the night. The lake stilled again, perfect, glassy calm. I turned the key. Headlights washed over gravel. And I drove away from the sound of my sister's perfect world collapsing behind me. By the time I reached Boston, the sky had started to lighten. Highway signs blurred past like memories I no longer needed to carry. My phone buzzed non-stop in the cup holder. 16 missed calls from Mom. 3 from Dad. 1 from an unknown number. I didn't check any of them. Silence was finally worth more than explanations. When I walked into my apartment, it smelled faintly of rain and old coffee. The city was waking up, headlights streaking across the window. I hung my deep wine-colored dress over a chair. Not a single wrinkle. Not a single stain. It looked like armor. Armor I didn't know I had worn into battle. A new message lit up my phone. Please answer, Amber. We didn't know. Mom. They always say that when everything falls apart. We didn't know. But she did. Every time she told me to stay quiet. Every time she laughed at Leia's cruelty. Every time she said, "You're overreacting. You're fine." I placed the phone face down and opened my laptop instead. A map of Maine flickered on the screen, dotted with tiny towns along the coast. I clicked one at random. Booked. A week beside the ocean sounded like peace. Before leaving, I stepped onto my balcony. The air felt cleaner than it had in years. Across the river, the sunrise cut through the skyline in shades of gold and shadow. They could keep their apologies. Their excuses. Their stories. I finally had mine. For the first time in my life, silence didn't mean being invisible. It meant freedom. At my sister's wedding, I was seated beside the trash cans. This morning, I'm sitting by the river. Same silence. Different world. Back then, it was humiliation. Today, it's peace. Because sometimes the loudest revenge is the sound of your own footsteps leaving the room. They thought I would wait forever, for approval, for love, for a seat at their table. But I don't wait anymore. I don't beg for space. I build my own. And if you've ever been overlooked, pushed aside, or silenced by the people who were supposed to love you, remember this. Walking away isn't weakness. It's the first step toward freedom. Tell me, have you ever had to walk away from your own family?